Kingston History Centre, Courting the Past. As one of the most iconic buildings in the Royal Borough, the Guildhall is symbolic of the town, and it's hard to imagine it being in any other location. However, in the early 1930s, once it was identified that Clatton House, the Assizes Court, and the Town Hall were no longer fit to accommodate the growing area and population pressure, something had to be done. The courts alone had to serve the Kingston Borough Bench, the Kingston Division of the County Bench, the County Court Judge, Registrar, and the Coroner. Between 1901 and 1931, the population these courts served grew from 53,034 to 105,732 and was still on the increase. A subcommittee was formed to review the situation. This committee comprised the Mayor, Sir Alfred Woodgate, Alderman Bell, and Dr. Finney, amongst other councillors. They investigated the prospect of altering the existing buildings and providing necessary expansion. However, they found that the cost would be too high. The existing buildings would need annual repairs, and attempting to make the required alterations to the sites would be difficult. The committee concluded that it would be more cost-effective to build a new, modern building which accommodated all the administration's needs. As part of these investigations, the committee visited newly built town halls in Beckenham, Worthing and Wimbledon to gain inspiration and get a better understanding of what could be achieved and at what cost. Once it was agreed that a new building was the way forward, the committee then reviewed a number of site options. The first of these was Norberton Hall, which had long been in decline. Situated east of Kingston Town, Councillor Gregory argued this location would recentre the administration for the borough. With the new building out east, development and growth towards Malden would be encouraged, the benefit being a visible uplift in that part of the town. However, many of the committee held concerns that the location was too far from the business centre. It was felt that the needs of the businessmen of Kingston had to be taken into consideration. After all, it was they who would be paying the highest business rates, which would directly go to fund the new building. Second to be considered was a site in Denmark Road, heading southwards along the path of the Hogsmill River. The site in question was already partly occupied by a clinic, school and health and education offices. The strength of this option was the space on the site, and the potential of improving the area in which it would sit. However, similarly to the Norberton Hall site, there were concerns that Denmark Road would be seen as too far away from the town to be a viable option. There was also an added complication. A stream on the site would have to be diverted, with a bridge having to be built. It was estimated that this additional work would add another £9,000 to the cost of the project. The final site to be considered was that of Clatton House and the Assizes Court. The location was the most favourable, being in the heart of the business district. The site was already providing services which the new building would replace. Despite its central location, there was deemed enough space to build all the facilities required, including the incorporation of a new town hall, plus enough space to expand in the future. Due to the proximity to the Hogsmill, the river would require culverting, but despite this, it was still seen to be the best of the three options. This decision was confirmed at the 7th of April council meeting, where the findings were presented and the approval to place the new building on the Clatton House site was passed unanimously. Plans for the site quickly progressed, and even explored an extension of the project to incorporate additional features for the site, such as the building of a new fire station, but this was soon removed from the plans. It was estimated that the scheme, minus the culverting of the Hogsmill, would cost £124,700. Then, in a meeting on the 16th of May 1933, the committee chose to revive the historic name of Guildhall for the new building. Clatton House and the Assizes Court were vacated in December 1933 so that demolition could take place. By the 16th of January, work on the foundations had begun. The building of the superstructure then commenced on the 15th of April, with foundation stones for the new building officially laid on the 27th of June 1934 by the Mayor, Sir Alfred Woodgate. At this ceremony, Dr. Finney placed a box under the site of the stone, which contained a copy of council minutes, editions of the Times, the Surrey Comet and the Surrey Advertiser, a Kingston-upon-Thames municipal diary, and a programme from the ceremony. Maurice E. Webb of Sir Aston Webb and Son, the appointed architects, presented a silver trowel to the Mayor, before the Reverend T. B. Scrutton read a dedication and prayer over the stone. The 1930s saw a shift in architectural style, including the revival of previous styles, such as the mock Tudor homes dominating the emerging suburbs. There was somewhat of a Georgian revival too, which Maurice Webb used to design the Guildhall as a modern building in a Georgian style. Its unusual shape was adopted to fit the shape of the site as naturally as possible. The exterior design included subtle indications of two separate functions of the building, as externally the courts are covered in stonework, and the council offices above in red brickwork. The whole of the exterior was to be made from British materials, such as Portland stone, brickshot, and tiles from Cranley. Further details on the outside of the building include a number of stone carvings. These were designed and carved by Mr. Walter Gilbert in close collaboration with Maurice Webb. The intention of the carvings was to provide something to the building which was unique and representative of the location and purpose of Guildhall, including the river, which can be seen in the bottom left image. Initially, it had also been hoped that the commemorative windows from the Old Town Hall, now the Market House, were to be moved to the new Guildhall building. However, the stained glass was not thought to be in keeping with the style of the new building, so Finney suggested they go to the museum for safekeeping, where they remain to this day. As part of the building's modern style, it was boasted that the Guildhall would be all electric for the purposes of heating, lighting, hot water and cooking. However, more interestingly, the design incorporated a special internal feature in the new committee rooms. From the early days of the committee's planning for a new building, they had wanted committee rooms which could be opened up and combined into one large room, so that it could be big enough to accommodate the whole town meetings or host special occasions. This was achieved through the incorporation of movable walls, which can be lifted and lowered as required, and are still used to this day. When not being used, the walls are located within the walls of the courtrooms below. As with the Kingston-specific stone carvings on the front, details inside the building were designed to bring the town character to life. Upon the marble-covered staircase can be found the royal arms representing kings crowned at Kingston. The arms of Edmund, Edward the Martyr, Edward the Elder, Edwin, Athelstan and Edred pave the way up from the front of the Guildhall to the committee rooms. An additional shield with the three fishes of Kingston sits above the staircase. However, there is one glaring omission from the staircase, which is that of the arms of Ethelred. This nod to the royal connections was complemented by the decision to move the coronation stone to Guildhall from the marketplace, so that a safer viewing location for visitors could be provided. The final cost of the new building was in the region of £130,000, and in a wave of great civic excitement was officially opened on the 3rd of July 1935 by Her Royal Highness Princess Alice, Countess of Athlone, accompanied by Major General the Earl of Athlone, KG. In the run-up to the opening, the Surrey Comet called on the local area to decorate premises in as generous a manner as possible, and that they did. The town was decorated to welcome Princess Alice, and several hundred people turned up to greet her. As she exited the car which had brought her to Kingston from Thatched Cottage, Richmond Park, the band of the East Surrey Regiment greeted her with the national anthem. Once the princess had opened the door to the Guildhall with a ceremonial key, The ceremony was held inside the building and broadcast out for the crowds to hear. After the ceremony and reception, and once the princess had left the Guildhall, the doors were opened up for public inspection. For just over 30 years, the Guildhall remained the centre of civic administration. But in 1964, when the new London Borough was created by amalgamating the boroughs of Kingston, Surbiton and Maldons and Combe, the number of council officers suddenly grew. With Guildhall clearly not big enough to accommodate all these people, the administrative officers were spread out across the borough, including a number being housed in Tolworth Tower. In 1978, plans began to centralise all offices in one location. This culminated in the opening of 2 additional buildings next to Guildhall. Firstly, that known as Guildhall 1, pictured to the bottom left, and then Guildhall 2, which was opened in 1981. The Guildhall 2 building cost £4.6 million to build, and again showcased as the most modern of office facilities. So modern, in fact, that the Surrey Comet likened it to a movie set. By centralising all offices on the Guildhall complex, it was projected that the council would save £200,000 a year in lost travel time and expenses alone. Now, to move on to the Magistrates Court, which are of particular interest to us. The town had always been proud of having justice provision since at least the 13th century, and then later being granted its own justices of the peace in the 1603 letters patent from James I. The Magistrates Court in Kingston, in the Guildhall, were purpose-built, and when the building was opened for public inspection at the official opening ceremony, the Surrey Comet reported on members of the public getting into the docks to get a feel for the new facilities and what it would be like to be put before the magistrates. However, after 66 years of operation, the first threat to the continued existence of magistrates' courts in Kingston came in 2002. Public outcry, a campaign from the Surrey Comet, and efforts from the council to negotiate their local worth enabled the doors to be kept open. But as it turned out, only for a short period of time. In 2009, it was announced that 1 in 4 magistrates' courts in London would have to close, and fears about the future of Kingston's courts rapidly re-emerged. Once it was announced that Kingston was one of those due to be closed, protests from the public, council, magistrates and press alike re-argued the local worth of the courts. The Surrey Comet argued that in splitting Kingston's cases between Richmond, Wimbledon and Battersea, the changes would sever this connection between local justice and local people. However, the courts played more than just a role in seeking justice. The magistrates worked to support the local community through volunteering opportunities, support and guidance for victims and the accused, and their so-called Poor Box charity, which saw the magistrates distributing funds to locals in need. The impact of losing the courts would be huge, not to mention the waste and cost of travel time for the public and the police to extend other magistrates' courts in London. The protests, petitions and pleas for the courts to remain open were not enough to stop the decision. The last case at Kingston Magistrates Court was heard on the 30th of June 2011, followed by a special farewell ceremony. At this point, the fate of the courtrooms was unknown. In December 2013, it was agreed that a new lease of life would be given to the courts. They were destined to become the new home of registration services, who would move to Kingston from their premises at 35 Combe Road, Norberton, and the remainder of the space was to become office accommodation. The following summer it was decided that the office accommodation would instead be turned into the new home for the local History and Archives Service. Due to the special character of the courts, the conversion of the space was to be accomplished through a careful restoration project guided by Historic England and at a cost of £2.5 million. Specialist restoration techniques were used for areas such as the wood panelling and crittle windows. Heritage paint palettes were used for redecoration in order to keep the colours as they would have been in 1935. A fine balancing act was needed in order to create a functional space which would support 21st century services while respecting the listed nature of the building, maintaining the character of the original courtrooms wherever possible, sensitively reintegrating original features. These are the before and after shots of one of the magistrates' retiring rooms, which is now the Heritage Team Leader's office. The original look and feel of the space has been retained, including the original lights. As you can see, very little of the character has changed. And these are the before, during and after shots of Court 1, which is now the research room at the History Centre. During the course of the project, a few hidden secrets were unearthed. This included a pile of assumed stolen credit cards hidden in the ductwork of one of the cells and dated from the 1960s and 70s. A 1930s drinks bottle was also found, which had been built into the courtroom furniture, presumably during construction. It was this court, former Court 1, and the offices surrounding it, which were allocated to the local History and Archives Service. The shelving in the search room was very important to us. We wanted to ensure it was in keeping with the style of the room. Visitors to the History Centre enter through the Magistrates' entrance, where the foyer is used for temporary exhibitions, and the cupboards once used to store the magistrates' robes are now used to store empty archive boxes. We hope you've enjoyed this brief history of the Guildhall and a short tour of the Magistrates' Courts. Do come and visit us in person so that you can see the beautiful building which we now inhabit. Thank you for listening.